where is it going? I mean, I operate at least, I would say if you push me to the wall, I operate on the belief that reality does matter. It's not like any one individual can encapsulate all of, let's call it objective reality, but you can't say that objective reality doesn't exist, right? Like you jump off a building and flap your arms, it's not going to end well for you. And so, like, reality exists. To me, we're living through a time where you start to see, and we're going to see it big time in markets. The monetary system is a fraud. It's been a fraud for a long time. We've been able to, and the phrase that's always used is kick the can down the road. And we have, right? And the whole like creation of these fiat currency units. There's been a whole shell game that's taken place over the course of most of my life because I was born in 72. And so everybody knows what happened August 15, 71. Nixon comes on and says he's protecting the dollar against speculators, and we're going to temporarily, right, delink from gold, and et cetera. Of course, that, like all temporary government measures, turned out to be permanent. But like reality matters. And we're living through a time where reality is beginning to reassert itself in ways that are simultaneously predictable, but the consequences are not predictable because, again, the growth of the state, the rise of tremendous authoritarian power that would have been inconceivable. We're all taught in school that, like, no, this, civics class in 10th grade is like, this is how our government works, and when you vote, it matters, and this is how we keep the ship of state, from going on the rocks. And none of that is true right now. And so, and then, add a layer of, just tremendous technology that you're being inundated by videos and images and, right, all of these things that come across your feed that everybody is so hypnotized by. You go out to a restaurant, entire families like sitting down, nobody talks, everybody's staring at a screen and, sort of being programmed, day after day. Where's it headed? Is it self-limiting? I guess is really the question. Like, will reality limit some portion of what is possible, that we're going to live through like a kind of great awakening where the great inversion gets uninverted? What do you see coming? Like, what does it look like to you? Whether, based on your experience in private equity or just as a kind of deep thinker on this topic.
Look, I think the imposition of or the attempted imposition of a control grid of sources is underway, and I expect that to continue. The other thing that I expect to continue is that most people will live in denial, and continue to bandy about completely stupid phrases like conspiracy theorists when people talk about it. And under those conditions, they will concede, one point at a time, inhibitions of inhibitions of their freedoms. That will very quickly result in economic stagnation, or perhaps even, to use the horrible term coined by the World Economic Forum, degrowth. And there will be privation and hardship, I think, of a scale not seen on a sustainable in a sustainable way for several hundred years. I mean, yes, there have been kind of globally catastrophic events like the two world wars. But those have been pretty short duration events relative to what I'm talking about. I'm talking about generational or even multi-generational stuff, a reversion to what I would describe as kind of the normal steady state of humanity, which is to say, lives and centuries passing by under conditions of almost complete stasis, where no progress is made, when human lives do not improve, where people are born into and die in households that essentially, if they're lucky, have the same means and technologies at their hands. I think that's where we're heading. But beyond the continuation of those trends lies a world of great uncertainty. And it is a feature of empire that it can be very hard to see its collapse coming, and it can be very hard to predict the duration of the collapse. The Roman Empire took several hundred years to really come apart properly, but the world created by Stalin fell much more quickly. The world created by Mao fell much more quickly. I think it was quite a surprise when Deng Xiaoping um, uh, liberalized China's small and medium enterprises. And that was really the end of a long story under Mao. And a lot of people didn't see the wall coming down as a sort of near-term event. If you were alive in the early 80s, that didn't seem like an obvious candidate. Now, it may be that those events are far less emergent than people make them out to be, and than the stories we tell around them would suggest. But I'd still go back to the point that I started this last sort of paragraph or two on, which is that there's always great uncertainty about the future. And that is because the future depends in part on the creation of new knowledge, which is fundamentally unpredictable. So knowledge of how to reckon with encroaching control grid, encroaching bureaucracy, is perhaps lying just a few short years ahead of us. And the weaknesses of the current iteration of the swelling mandarinate may become apparent to us in ways that we've either somehow lost because they're forgotten in the midst of time, or are only really the purvey of people who are going through it or have been through it recently. So, for example, it's not surprising to me that a kind of beacon of freedom at the moment in the world is Eastern Europe. Countries like Serbia and Croatia are comparative Edens of sanity and common sense and getting on with life in a productive and generative fashion, whereas what I see going on in the United Kingdom, which I travel to on a regular basis, it more resembles the inmates of a madhouse, tearing each other apart and doing everything but that which is good for them and their children.
So let's get into geography here. So, you mentioned the UK. Eastern Europe, of course, has in living memory very clear recollection of the horrors of centralization and the squashing of individual liberty, which is not valuable because you get to be nihilistic, right? It's valuable because the discussion allows for progress and growth and like real prosperity to occur. You also are, I assume you're in Cape Town now. That's where your HQ
Yeah.
is. So you know a thing or two about collapsing societies from being there. But you said something interesting on the other video that I watched to prepare for this. That also, and this is partly my point on this channel. Obviously, we are heading into like there's a lot of factors in the equation that are going to be very hard to second guess like ahead of time, right? To predict in terms of here I'm talking about where geographically places will remain okay. I don't know a single person that I talk to. I know several people. I have several friends from South Africa, a boat captain here from fellow Maverick who keeps his boat in BVI. He just flew back from South Africa. They have a big farm, big area, lots of land somewhere in South Africa. And so, I get bits and pieces of the situation there. But my point is, even within collapse, there will be pockets of not just peace and prosperity, but of people who figured out how to circle the wagons. Is that also part of what you see coming in the prediction around like, yes, there probably will be ways to navigate, or there will be pockets of sanity and relative freedom where people are able to maintain prosperity and maintain some semblance of just peaceful human interaction, right? Do you foresee some portion of that also playing out? Because I think it's like if we have hope at all, it's that individuals will be able to, and our Mavericks group. Again, I'll put a little link to our upcoming event in Dallas. Our Mavericks group was formed out of the belief that like, well, we agree, we don't live in close proximity to each other, but in terms of forming a kind of community that is global, there is clearly some small portion of the population that is willing to understand and talk about and navigate some of the really difficult, dangerous, crazy things that have to be talked about, like we're discussing on this podcast. And as a guy living in South Africa, talk to the audience about collapse, what that looks like, the troubles that have gone on there just in recent times, because obviously it's been a volatile place for quite some time, and the ability to navigate that. I know you said Cape Town is super pleasant, right? Like the area you're in, right? Talk about that a little bit, because I think it's a big question for people, sort of how and where to go, right? To find some kind of semblance of peace and prosperity.
Yeah, look, I mean, I can talk about Africa. It's a vast continent, something in the region of 1 billion people on it, and 52 countries, many different cultures, many different, let's call them racial groups or ethnological groups. So languages, yeah, thousands of them.
Wealthy place in terms of
You've even
natural,
got, sorry?
wealthy place, Africa, in terms of natural resource, like the ability to develop,
Absolutely.
obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say also in terms of human capital, I'm not a believer in Africans or any particular populations in Africa being fundamentally less capable than human beings elsewhere in the world. But we even have like incredibly basic, cultural differences at an incredibly basic level. So within Africa, there are matrilineal societies and patrilineal societies, and neither the twain shall meet. But so it's a very complex continent. Um, there are problems in common among African countries. Colonial pasts loom large in the equation. The resource base looms large in the equation, and also just the relative stage of development of African cultures when Europeans first set foot in Africa. So they went through like a sort of hyperspeed process of being thrust from agrarian or hunter-gatherer type society structure into cities in the space of a couple of generations. And that's something that few people in human history have had to contend with, and this was pretty much on a continent-wide basis. So problems are different from what they are elsewhere in the world, but there is also incredible diversity of situation within that fairly sort of difficult cluster of problems. South Africa is a bit of a odd man out because for most, or for a good part of its history, there were substantial subsets of it which were largely under the sway of European people, sparsely populated when Europeans arrived. And it's only been a fairly recent phenomenon that the population of Black South Africans grew much faster than the white population, and the power structures sort of became untenable. The successor to the colonial power structure became untenable. Putting aside the benefits and the costs of that system and the benefits and costs of getting rid of it, that is the sort of the fact of the matter. But the result is a rather strange combination. I find it a very exciting amalgam of a kind of very influx and complex Black population, together with a white population that left Europe for the most part many generations ago, and with very little to connect them back to European culture. And you could maybe look at a family like mine and say that culturally we're akin to Europeans round about 1900, and that we wouldn't recognize them, or we don't recognize them 125 years later. They've moved on to become something we aren't. Very roundabout way of saying that I find it a very pleasant place to live, a very exciting place to live, and there's a certain pragmatism and warmth and savviness in the population. So, for example, whereas most people in the US and Europe just swallowed all the propaganda and lined up for their COVID injections. It was only a minority of the South African population that did so. Most of the
Bravo.
people straight through the bullshit and refused to roll up their sleeves.
Dirt
I think
wisdom.
that there will be other aspects of the whole globalist advance, which will be more likely to be resisted in a place like Africa than in the rest of the world. And some of that is owing to poverty. If you haven't got the internet, then you're not going to get taken in by nearly as much propaganda as somebody living in upstate New York.
I know,
Um,
I know what
yeah,
you say is true. I just came from my property in Guatemala, and
yeah.
have a house on a mountain in a tiny pueblo of 2,000 indigenous people. I don't have time to tell that story, how I got there, but I see it there too. Like it's actually a blessing not to be quite so tapped into, right, listening to authority and power structures and all the rest. They have an advantage because of that. Tremendous chaos and
Yeah,
opportunity and chaos, really, a little bit. Nick,
yeah, I can imagine that.
I know you have to go. I have to ask you, did you get a chance to read the book that I mentioned to you, Painter of Battles? I actually reread it. Have you had a chance to? We share a love of Perez Reverte, beloved Spanish author. It's the
Yeah,
best book that he's done. It's a tremendous piece of work. I actually reread it for this interview. I listened to it. I went sailing the last 2 days over to Vieques and just got back last night. And so I listened to it while I was sailing. And have you had a chance to go through it, or is that
I
for
haven't
another?
been through it yet. I was aiming to get through it on my last holiday, but turned out to have such interesting interlocutors on board the boat I was on that I hardly read a single page the whole time I was there.
Lovely,
But
lovely.
it very much is on my reading list. And a friend of mine put me onto Reverte comparatively recently. It's not somebody I was familiar with, and he's a complete delight.
He's a delight. He's a delight. And this work, and I won't ruin it, right, for people, but he is delving into one of the toughest questions, and the book is just brilliant the way it's set up. The Painter Battles is painting the inside of a tower on the coast of, I think, Italy, and no, not Italy. I guess it would be Spain, perhaps. And the tower was used to warn of Moorish invasion in hundreds of years past. And so he renovates the tower, and he's painting the mural of war that he could never capture when he was a war photographer. And this character from his past shows up and says, you took a picture of me that made me famous, and now I'm here to kill you. And then they walk through in a kind of Socratic dialogue exactly why people love to kill each other. It's a brilliant, brilliant expose of this. And the
Yeah.
ending is just like down to the last page. The ending is just dynamite, just tremendous, unbelievable expose of why human beings are the way we are. And so I suspect we're going to get a lot of confirmation of what's in that book in the years ahead, although I hope I'm wrong about the worst parts of it. My son is knocking at the door, so it's time for us to go. And I know you have another meeting now. So
Yeah.
how should we wrap up here? Yeah, and any last words for folks to send us on our way?
Yeah, well, I feel that I've maybe painted a picture that's a little bit depressing, and yeah, I will be the first to confess to sometimes standing back and saying, "Well,
Here
this
we are.
doesn't feel good,"
Yeah.
But I want to re-up what I said about the future being inherently unpredictable and being subject to the creation of new knowledge. Nobody is a futurologist. Anybody who claims to be is a charlatan, and we can't predict very far into the future at all. We can't foresee every collapse, every ascendance, every turn of history. So that in
Yeah.
itself is a reason just to keep on going and keep on doing
Right.
what sort of seems sensible, which is ignoring social media and not getting too involved in AI, buying less stuff from big corporations, spending more time on life in analog, spending more time with people in real life. Those are the things that I think are relatively obviously good for you and good for society. So just keep doing that, and then and stay alive, so that you can see how things pan out.
Stay alive.
And then do what you can to resist the encroaching control grid. Just say no as often as you can in as many ways as you can, and encourage other people to do that too. That should hasten the collapse of a very ill-conceived project.
Excellent wisdom. Nick, I could talk to you all day. Thank you very much, my friend. I hope we get a chance to check in. By the way, I will be flying to Cape Town to come to dinner with you at some point. So I'll
Please
reach
do.
out to you,
Please do.
on our private channel. Thanks very much. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks,
All the
Tain.
best to you, and hope to run into you soon.
Very good. Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Yep. Thanks. Mavericks Project is a private community focused on powerful connections, trusted information, and time-tested solutions to create and preserve wealth during our epoch of extreme change. The Mavericks Project was born out of the social, economic, and geopolitical schism that kicked off in 2020. A small band of contrarian misfits spent the lockdown years observing problems, analyzing the implications, and plotting solutions. Now, several times a year, we Mavericks get together in fun and fascinating locations to talk about solutions to the social dangers to your family's safety and how to avoid them, the increasing state surveillance and how to negate it, the rapidly declining U.S. empire and how we want to position for what's coming next, the risks to your family's generational wealth and how to protect it. If you think you have what it takes to be a Maverick, this is your chance to come make new and better friends with some of the most accomplished people you will ever meet. Join us from November 4th to 7th in Dallas, Texas for 3 unforgettable days of action, discussion, and answers. The link for the event, along with all the details, is below this video.